The envelope felt heavy in Rebecca's apron pocket, heavier than a sin should feel. Inside was $300, enough to pay the vet bill for the horses, enough to keep the shame away from her father's eyes for another month. She had stitched until her fingers bled by the light of a single kerosene lamp to earn it, but as she stepped out of the English shop and onto the dusty road, she froze. Across the street, standing by his buggy, was Daniel. He wasn't looking at the horses. He was looking straight at her. His eyes filled with a confusion that broke her heart. He saw her coming out of the forbidden world, and she couldn't tell him why. The summer in Lancaster County had been cruel. It was the kind of heat that settled in the valley and refused to leave, turning the lush green cornfields into rows of brown, rattling ghosts. The air was thick with dust and the relentless buzzing of cicadas. On the Miller farm, the silence was heavy. It was not the peaceful silence of contentment, but the heavy, suffocating silence of war. Rebecca Miller sat on the front porch, her needle flashing silver in the late afternoon sun. At 22, Rebecca was known for two things: her quiet, gentle spirit and her skill with a needle. While other girls struggled to keep their stitches even, Rebecca's quilts seemed to flow like water. She was working on a sunshine and shadow pattern, contrasting dark diamonds of fabric with bright yellows and oranges. It was ironic, she thought. There was too much sunshine this year, and the shadows were creeping into her father's eyes. Her father, Abram, was a proud man. He was a deacon in the church, a man who believed that if you worked hard and prayed harder, God would provide. But God had sent a drought, and before the drought he had sent the sickness that took the prized dairy cows. The vet bills were stacked in a tin box on the kitchen shelf, a box Abram refused to open in front of the family. "Your stitches are tight today, Rebecca," a voice called from the gate. Rebecca looked up, her heart doing a small, treacherous flip in her chest. It was Daniel. He was the neighbor's son, a man with shoulders broadened by hay baling, and a smile that came slowly, like the sun rising over the ridge. "A loose stitch unravels the whole blanket." "Daniel," she replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. Daniel walked his horse up to the fence. He didn't come in. He respected the boundaries. They were not officially courting yet, though everyone in the district knew it was only a matter of time. Sunday singings usually found them sitting on the same bench. "The creek is low," Daniel said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a blue handkerchief. "My dad says we may have to sell the carriage horses if the rain doesn't come by September." "It will rain," Rebecca said, though she felt the fear tightening her stomach. If the Stoltzfus family was struggling, her own family must be drowning. "We must have faith. Faith is good," Daniel said, looking at her with an intensity that made her look down at her quilt. "But a man wants to offer a future, Rebecca. It is hard to ask ... certain questions when the harvest is dead in the field." He was talking about marriage. He wanted to ask her, but he couldn't take on a wife when he couldn't feed his own stock. "The future is not ours to see, Daniel," she whispered. "Perhaps," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, perfect peach. "I found this on the one tree near the barn that still has water. I thought you might like it." He placed the peach on the fence post. It was a small gesture, but in their world it was a declaration. As Daniel rode away, Rebecca took the peach. It was warm from the sun. She went inside, intending to share it with her mother, Mary. But as she passed the kitchen, she heard voices. Her father and the English banker were talking. The window was open. Double quotes, ... "Foreclosure is a harsh word," Mr. Miller, the banker, was saying, "but 3 months is a long time. The bank needs a payment by the 1st of the month. $500. "I will have it," Abram Miller said, his voice shaking with a pride that terrified Rebecca. "The Lord will provide. The 1st of the month, Abram," the banker said. Rebecca stood in the hallway, the peach forgotten in her hand. $500. It was a fortune. They didn't have 50. The idea came to her 3 days later at the market. Rebecca was selling eggs and jams at their roadside stand. A tourist bus had stopped, and a woman with expensive sunglasses and a sharp voice was looking at the quilts hanging on the line. "These are exquisite," the woman said, running her hand over Rebecca's sunshine and shadow quilt. "This stitching, it's better than anything in the gallery in town." "How much?" "It is not for sale," Rebecca said politely. "It is for my sister's hope chest. I'll give you $300 for it," the woman said. Rebecca froze. $300. I cannot," Rebecca stammered. "Here is my card," the woman said, shoving a glossy piece of paper into Rebecca's hand. "I own the Dutch heritage shop in town. If you change your mind, or if you make more, ... No questions asked." That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, listening to her father pacing downstairs. The shame of losing the farm would kill him. He would never accept charity, and he certainly wouldn't let his daughter sell fancy goods to the English world for profit. It went against the simplicity they cherished. But was it a sin to save your family? The next night, Rebecca waited until the house was dark. She lit a small candle in the washroom at the back of the house. She pulled out her fabric scraps leftovers from years of sewing. She began to cut. For 2 weeks, Rebecca lived a double life. By day, she did her chores: milking, weeding, cooking. She was exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red. By night, she made wall hangings, crib quilts, pillow covers, anything small enough to hide in her market basket. She grew distant from Daniel. On Sunday, when he tried to sit next to her at the singing, she moved away. She couldn't look at him. She felt dirty, like she was carrying a disease. "Is something wrong, Rebecca?" Daniel asked her after church, blocking her path to the buggy. "You look pale. You are thin." "I am just tired from the heat." "Daniel," she lied. "You are hiding something," he sighed softly. "I can see it in your eyes." Are you thinking of leaving? Leaving?" Rebecca gasped. "No. Why would you say that? You are distant. You jump when people speak. And Levi saw you walking near the English shops on Thursday. Alone? I was running an errand for Mongem." She lied again. The lies tasted like ash in her mouth. "Be careful, Rebecca," Daniel said, his voice thick with hurt. "The world out there eats people. Do not let it eat you." The first of the month arrived. Rebecca had $550 hidden inside an old coffee tin buried under the floorboards of the chicken coop. She had a plan. She would put the money in an envelope and leave it on the kitchen table where her father would find it. She would write a note saying it was from a friend. He would assume it was a neighbor helping out, and his pride would eventually let him accept it as God's grace. But plans, like stitches, can unravel. That morning, Rebecca took the buggy into town to make one last sale, a beautiful log cabin quilt she had finished at 3 a.m. She met the shop owner, Mrs. Higgins, at the back door of the shop to avoid being seen. "You're a lifesaver, honey," Mrs. Higgins said, handing her a stack of bills. "Tourists go crazy for this authentic stuff." As Rebecca took the money, a flash of a camera blinded her. She spun around. A tourist was standing there, smiling. Great shot! A real Amish deal. Rebecca pulled her bonnet down and ran. She scrambled into her buggy and whipped the horse, her heart hammering like a trapped bird. She had to get away. She didn't see the other buggy parked down the street. The buggy belonging to Bishop Yoder, and sitting next to the bishop was Daniel. They had seen her. They had seen the exchange of money. They had seen her running. When she got home, Her father was waiting on the porch. The bishop's black buggy was already there. Daniel was standing by the fence, his back to her. "Come inside, Rebecca," her father said. His voice was dead. She walked into the parlor. Her mother was crying in the corner. The bishop sat sternly on the wooden chair. "Rebecca," the bishop began, his voice rumbling like distant thunder, "it has been brought to our attention that you have been engaging in business with the world, that you are selling the works of your hands for profit in secret." "It is not for profit," Rebecca cried. "Daniel saw you," the bishop continued. "He saw you take the money." Rebecca looked at Daniel through the window. He wouldn't turn around. "Is it true?" her father asked. "Have you been deceiving us? Have you been sneaking out at night?" "Dead, please," Rebecca begged, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out the roll of cash. "It is for the farm, the bank. I heard you. I heard about the debt. I did it to save the land." She threw the money on the table. $550. Her father looked at the money as if it were a poisonous snake. He stood up, his face purple with rage and shame. "You think I would pay my debts with money earned in deceit, Abraham? Groaret? You think I would let my daughter trade her soul for a few acres of dirt? You have shamed me, Rebecca. You have made me look like a man who cannot care for his own house, so his daughter must become a merchant in the street." "I did it out of love," she sobbed. "This is not love," the bishop said sadly. "This is pride. You thought you knew better than God. You thought you could fix what God decided to test." The verdict was swift. Because she was not yet baptized, she could not be shunned in the full sense, but she was placed under discipline. She was not to speak to the young men. She was not to go to town. She was to sit in the back of the church. But the worst punishment came from outside the room. Daniel got in his buggy and drove away without looking back. The weeks that followed were a blur of misery. Rebecca did her work in silence. Her father refused to touch the money. It sat in the coffee tin on the mantel, a reminder of her sin. The farm situation grew worse. The bank sent a final notice: foreclosure in 10 days. Rebecca walked through the days like a ghost. She had lost everything: her reputation, her father's trust, and Daniel. One evening, she went to the barn to feed the horses. She found Daniel there, talking to her father. She hid in the shadows of the hayloft. "I can lend you the money, Abram," Daniel was saying. "I sold my riding horse, the big roan. It brought enough. I cannot take your money, Daniel," Abram said, his voice tired. "You need that for your own start." "I have no start," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "I have no one to start with. Rebecca ... She has a wild heart. I cannot yoke myself to a woman who loves the world more than the truth." Rebecca clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. He thought she loved the money. He thought she loved the English world. He didn't understand that she had sacrificed her conscience for his future, for her father's dignity. She couldn't let this stand. She couldn't let Daniel sell his horse, the horse he loved, for a debt she had already paid. She stepped out of the shadows. "Stop!" she said, her voice trembling but clear. Abram and Daniel spun around. "You will not speak," Abram warned. "I will speak," Rebecca said, stepping into the light of the lantern. "And then I will be silent forever, if you wish. Daniel, you think I sold those quilts because I wanted money? You think I wanted to deal with the English?" She walked over to her father and grabbed his rough, calloused hand. "Look at these hands. Dead," she said. "You taught me that hands are for working. You taught me that family is the most important thing under God. I broke the rules. Yes, I lied. Yes, but I did not do it for me. She turned to Daniel. "I did it because I saw a man I loved, my father being crushed, and I wanted to ensure that the man I hoped to marry Daniel would not have to sell his horse to save us." She reached into her apron and pulled out a piece of paper. It was the receipt from the vet bill. She had paid it 2 days ago with the remaining $50, without telling anyone. "I am not wild, Daniel," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I am just... terrified. Terrified of losing the only world I know." Silence filled the barn. The only sound was the chewing of the horses. Abram looked at the vet receipt. He looked at his daughter. The anger in his eyes began to crack, replaced by a deep, painful sorrow. He realized that her sin was born of his own pride. If he had been honest about the debt, she wouldn't have had to lie. The next Sunday, after the service, there was a council meeting. Abram Miller stood up before the congregation. "I have a confession," he said, his voice strong. "I have been proud. I hid my burdens from my brothers, and in doing so, I caused my daughter to stumble. The money she, E-R-N-E, it was earned in secret, but it was given in love. I will accept the help of the community to pay the bank and the money Rebecca earned. We will give it to the Deacon's Fund for the Widows." It was a public humbling, a rare thing. Rebecca sat in the back, her head bowed. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Mrs. Yoder, the bishop's wife. "Come," she said gently. "Sit with us." Later that afternoon, Rebecca sat on the porch swing. The air was cooler. A hint of rain was finally on the breeze. A buggy pulled up. It was Daniel. He didn't have his horse, the big roan. He had sold it anyway to help another neighbor. But he was smiling. He walked up the steps and sat on the railing, facing her. "You are stubborn, Rebecca Miller," he said. "I am my father's daughter," she replied, not looking up from her hands. "I went to the shop in town," Daniel said. "The woman there... Mrs. Higgins. She told me something. She told me you refused to sell her your sunshine and shadow quilt, the one you made last winter. It was not for sale," Rebecca said softly. "She said you told her it was for your hope chest, for the man you loved." Daniel reached into a bag he had brought. He pulled out the quilt, the sunshine and shadow. "She gave it back to me," Daniel said. "She said she couldn't keep it after seeing you run away. She said it belongs where the love is." He unfolded the quilt and draped it over Rebecca's lap. His hand lingered on hers. "I was wrong," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought you were looking for a way out, but you were just fighting to keep us all in. I am sorry, Rebecca. I should have trusted you," she whispered. "We will trust each other now," he said. "The rain is coming, Rebecca. The drought is ending." As if on cue, a drop of rain hit the dusty porch rail. Then another tenahently steady shower began to fall, washing the dust from the corn, the heat from the air, and the fear from their hearts. 1 year later, the camera pans over a scene of a frolic, a community gathering. It is a barn raising for a young couple. Rebecca is sitting with the women, stitching a new quilt. It is a double wedding ring pattern. She looks up and smiles. She is wearing the white apron of a newly married woman. Across the yard, Daniel is high up on the beams of the barn, hammering. He looks down, catches her eye, and waves. Abram is there too, older but lighter. He is holding a baby Rebecca's nephew. He looks at peace. The narrator speaks softly. "We weave our lives with the threads we are given. Some are dark, some are bright, some are knotted with mistakes. But if we trust the master weaver, even the broken threads can make something beautiful. In the end, it is not the perfection of the stitch that matters, but the love that holds the quilt together. The screen fades to black on the image of the quilt, vibrant and whole.